So today we're going to talk about carbohydrates. Now, the first thought that people have is that's the monster that lives underneath their bed. That is the boogeyman that is stopping them from getting to their goals. That is the answer to all of our problems. Carbohydrates. No. So when we look at carbohydrates, what we need to think about is the volume of carbohydrates and the quality of carbohydrates. So the typical carbohydrate thought process is if I have any carbs, my weight will go up. And there's technically a yes to that, but there's a really big no to that as well. When you have carbohydrates in a system that has not had carbohydrates in a while, your weight will go up. And we're going to touch on that when we go into carb cycling. When you have not had carbohydrates for a while, your weight will go down. And we will touch on that when we go into carb cycling. But for right now, carbohydrates themselves will not make you fat. If you go home and you get a potato and you eat that potato, you will not be fatter because you ate that potato. You will be fatter if you ate that potato and you covered it in sugar. That usually will cause your weight to go up a lot faster if your body can't buffer that much carbohydrate. The quality of carbohydrate, eating a bowl full of literal sugar or sugary cereal or something like that, will have more of an impact on your fasting glucose, which will drive your insulin levels higher, which will slow fat burn down longer. So if you're having broccoli, well, that's a carbohydrate. And I don't see anyone running around saying broccoli made me fat. No, potatoes make me fat. Maybe. But again, there's fiber in there, there's other things in there that slow the rate at which your insulin levels spike. So when we look at carbohydrates, they are not the enemy. The volume of carbohydrates, the quality of carbohydrates, that is something that we can always debate as far as whether or not that's the enemy. There is a place for some high sugar carbohydrates depending on how you're training. Most of us don't need high sugar carbohydrates in our training. So if you've ever seen anything that says eat gummy bears during a workout, that's not the best idea because you're probably not putting out enough energy to need that kind of sugar replenishment. So when we look at carb cycling, as I kind of alluded to a second ago, your body weight fluctuates very quickly when we pull carbohydrates out of our system. So some people will notice that if we start taking carbs out of our system, we can drop between 3 to 5 pounds in a single week. That's 100% true. When your muscles are full of muscle glycogen, they are also full of water. Now, glycogen and water, for this example, go hand in hand. Since they go hand in hand, if we've taken the glycogen out of the muscle and we've lost weight, and we put the glycogen back into the muscle, we gain weight. I'm sure you guys said it because you guys are playing along with me. So what happens is people go low carb for 3, 4, 5 days. Then they go out and they have some French fries. Well, we have salt and we have carbs. Guess what happens? Naturally, the weight goes up because our body holds water. It's not rocket science, but think about it this way. If I take a sponge and let it dry out, it becomes lighter, it becomes more rigid. If I fill that sponge up with water, it becomes heavier, it becomes more floppy, it becomes more flimsy, and you notice there's more sponge there. So what carb cycling allows you to do is let your body drop not only your carbohydrate level, but your insulin level. It allows your body to become more insulin sensitive over time by fluctuating the amount of carbohydrates you're getting in. The problem with carb cycling and carb reduction is most people don't have the blood sugar tolerance, so they don't have the ability to actually regulate their own blood sugar to a point where it allows them to be efficient with carbohydrate consumption. So that leads us to our hangry, and I'm going to circle back and finish some more with the carbohydrate cycling in a second, but hangry is one of those moments where your blood sugar dips or your calories have been too low for too long that physiologically your brain is making you more aggressive. Your brain makes you more aggressive because our primary function in life is to survive. Sometimes surviving means hunting food down, and we can interpret hunting however we want to. But when we have to go get food, we become more aggressive, we become more territorial. If you've ever seen a hungry dog, they just wolf down their food and they move on with life. And that's what we don't want to do. That's what hangry is. Hangry is a point where your blood sugar has either dipped too low or your overall calories have been too low for too long and your body is becoming aggressive from it. So we'll finish up on carb cycling real quick because we're getting close to our time. But carb cycling is basically purposefully manipulating your carbohydrates up and down. That can be used for weight loss, that can be used for muscle gain, that can be used for performance enhancement. Carb loading is one of the things I want to touch on because what most people think about as carb loading is I'm going to go eat more carbs today. Well, if you've been eating a large amount of carbohydrates for the past 30 days and you try and load more in there, we go back to that sponge example, you cannot load more water onto an already wet sponge. So if your muscles are already full of glycogen, you can't load more glycogen in. So in order to carb load, you must first carb deplete. So in short, carbs are not the boogeyman. Eat them. They aren't going to make you fat. No one's ever been mugged by a potato. Carb cycling, there is a place for it. It is purposeful. It will help you with strength, lean mass, and body composition. It can also help with sleep quality. Being hangry means you probably have some poor blood sugar regulation. Cutting out carbs altogether could be leading to that, or maybe your calories are just too low for too long. All things that we can address in other videos if you guys want me to.